Hello, and in this video I'm going to be talking to you about password managers. I'm going to be telling you what they are, what the advantages are, what the disadvantages are, and which one I use. So this is Show Me Tech Tips. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Let's get started. So you may have heard the phrase password manager and be wondering what on earth is a password manager and why do we need one? So we've all been in that situation where you go into a website, you sign up to a mailing list, you log in for a new course or a new service, and it asks you for a password. And more nowadays they're asking for passwords which seem unbelievably complicated. It's got to have a lowercase, an uppercase, a strange symbol, a number, a capital letter in various different combinations. And we know we're all guilty of it. We have our favourite passwords that we tend to use time and time again, but then more often than not, of course, we get prompted that we have to change it, and now sites understandably are good at checking to see whether it's a new password. So people do all sorts of things to get around this. Sometimes they just capitalise the first letter, add the number 1 at the end, followed by an exclamation mark, or use passwords such as password or password1, which of course is not great. And unfortunately, those people who want to try and get your password so they can access those services for free or mess around with your accounts are getting smarter and smarter with how they get hold of those passwords. And literally the way they tend to do it is they just run through all known passwords and all dictionary words, and some will even do all combinations of dictionary words. So if you're using your wife's name or your daughter's name, your dog's name, or months and dates, unfortunately, hackers tend to use what's called a password dictionary, which lists all the common ones and then uses those to work out what your password is. So you need to make them unique. I mean, I say we all know what that should be. It should be something that you can't read. It should contain words. It should contain numbers and special symbols. We've all been there. But I know for one that I've got hundreds and hundreds of sites which I'm subscribed to by now, and knowing which one's which is a nightmare. And so, as I've mentioned before, sometimes what happens is people have a habit of writing them down, and of course that causes its own security problems, because if someone gets hold of that book where you've written them all down, that can cause a real problem. Or people just tend to repeat passwords over and over again, and that means if one password gets taken, the others get taken. And again, that's a trick that sometimes those hackers use. They will find your password for one site that's got low security and then try that same password across other sites. So you really do have to be careful. So the idea of a password manager is it takes care of all of that. It generates random passwords and stores them for you. And so you don't have to keep track of which password goes on which site. So how does it work? Well, basically when you set one up, you set a master password, is generally how they work. And then every time you create a new account, it'll ask you whether you want to add that password to the password manager account. And you can tell it to create very long passwords, very complicated passwords, and you won't care because you're not remembering those individual passwords. That's the job of the password manager. So you can make them as complicated as you like and really difficult for those nasty hackers to crack them. And you don't even have to think what they are. The password manager will think of them for you. Now, you might have seen some of these ones already on your devices where it says, do you want to save this password? For instance, on an iPhone, it'll ask you that. But they don't always store those securely. So you want a password manager that's going to store them properly and securely so that they can be used. So let's think of some of those advantages and disadvantages. So we'll start with the advantages. What are the advantages of using a password manager? So first of all, you don't need to remember all your passwords. You just need to remember the master password. And that makes it a lot easier because that you can make, normally you can make them as long as you like. You can make them multiple words, multiple sentences, and therefore it's going to be very hard for someone to guess. You just need to have one big password. And it can be a whole sentence, which again, people are not going to find easy to work out. You can also normally access your passwords across multiple devices. Now that's brilliant because it means that if you save a password on your desktop and then later go to your laptop, provided you're logged into your password manager will remember the one that you set on your desktop and it will automatically be available on your laptop and equally your iPhone or your Android device. So it means that those complicated passwords are stored centrally, so in the cloud, and therefore can be accessed anywhere. And that's real advantage. You don't have to think, oh yes, I've set a new password up on my desktop for a new site I'm visiting, and then think, what on earth is that when you go to use it on your phone? And the last big advantage is many of these come with extra features. So it's not just passwords they store. For instance, the one I use allows you to also store things like social security number and membership numbers and important notes. And also some allow you to have features such as sending out an emergency contact. So therefore one person in the event of an emergency can access all your passwords, but you have to obviously nominate who that person is. They also come with things like sometimes authenticators, which makes it easy to log on to websites instead of using two-factor authentication. So depending on which password manager you get, you also get these extra benefits, which again can just save you time and money and hassle. Now it wouldn't be right, of course, to go through the advantages without mentioning the disadvantages, because there are a couple that you just need to be aware of. So the main two are, there's normally a big problem if you forget your main password. So if you forget your main password, that's really the central key to all your other passwords. So that one you really do have to make special attention that you know what it is. And of course you want to memorize it, you don't want to write that down anywhere, you don't want to share that with anyone. As I mentioned, there's no problem creating a whole sentence as your password with words that are unusual or wouldn't perhaps be found in the dictionary, and all of that's going to help you. So there's nothing wrong with having an 80, 90, 100 character password. And again, obviously capitalize some of those letters, add some other characters in there, and it'll become very, very difficult for people to know what your password is. So the second thing is you have to be aware that if that password manager did get hacked, then someone would have access to all your passwords. Now, that is extremely, extremely unlikely, but I'll mention it because it's just not impossible. And there have been stories that come out of big companies, big multinational companies, who have been hacked. We hear about it in the news every now and then. So it's not beyond absolute reason that can happen, but you can minimize the risk by making sure you've got a secure password on the account. And also I recommend, which I'm going to talk about in a second, having a paid account. The second bit to that is, of course, if that service went down, so if that service went offline for some reason, maybe it's for maintenance or maybe it's for other reasons, it would mean that all those passwords suddenly were not available to you. And because you haven't made a note of them, because you didn't generate them, but the password manager generated them, you wouldn't have a clue what your passwords are. So again, that's unlikely to happen, but you just have to be aware that those two things are the main things that could go wrong with the password manager. Now, having said that, I've used password manager for 3 or 4 years now, and only once has it become unavailable, and that was for about 10 minutes. And there's been no signs of it getting hacked. So which password manager do I use? Well, I use the paid service, and that's called Lastpass. Now you might be searching the internet and go, oh, there's lots of free services. For instance, there's some that come with your phone, which will offer to save your password. Google will offer to save your passwords. Well, I would steer clear of all of those. Also, you get third-party ones, which are free, and you might go, well, if it's a third party and it's free, who's going to argue with that? But of course, if they're free, you have to think, how are they making their money and how are they securing their services? Have they got the money coming into them to make sure that they're paying for the best security possible? So in this case, I want to make sure I'm actually paying for the service, because in the very, very unlikely event that something did go wrong, I want to be able to go to that service provider and say, I've paid you for this service and I expect you not to have distributed my passwords or anyone to have hacked the system. I've got some comeback to them, which if I haven't paid, I feel I haven't really got. So I've used Lastpass. Now, having said it's a paid service, it really is not expensive. In the UK, it works out just over £2 a month. So you're talking, £20, £25 for the year. So probably $30 to $40, I would think, in the US. for a year. That really is nothing. I mean, as everyone always says, it's a cup of coffee and you will get access to that password manager. I found it very reliable and really good at making sure your passwords are secure and making it really easy to set up and to use across multiple devices. So that's the one that I use, and therefore that's the one I recommend. So just to let you know, I'm not affiliated with them or sponsored by them, it just happens to be the one that I use. So I'll be interested in your comments. If down below you put comments about which password manager you like to use and which ones you found most successful, I'll be interested to hear. But what I do urge you to do is go away, do some research, and make sure you get a password manager installed. So this has been Show Me Tech Tips. If you like this video, click on the like button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.